What type of clothing did you wear when you were growing up? What?
Yeah, well, denim was a big thing. You know, our clothes were made mostly out of that. We had fleece-lined underwear, and oh, you know, even if you watch any of the Western movies, you know, and I don't know why down in the United States where it was so hot, they had these underwear on winter and summer, but maybe it was an insulation to keep the heat away and keep the cold away. I don't know, but I know what they were good for up here. In the winter, in the summertime, we never wore them. Of course not. You know, we went barefooted most of the time in the summertime when we were young. We would even have to go out and stook barefooted in the fields, you know, and the bottom of your feet finally gets so that you don't even feel the thistles that you step into. But it takes a lot of training, and the next year it all started over again. Cotton was a lot, you know. There was no polyester in those days. We didn't have parkas, and when parkas came out, oh man, that was the greatest invention for us. You could put this hood over the top of you, you know, turn your back to the wind and let the dang thing blow, you know. It didn't hurt you any, as long as you weren't going against the wind, or if you were driving an open sleigh, you turn around and put your back to the wind, you know. And
Would you did you wear a lot of bib overalls when you were growing up?
yeah, bib overalls, or the coveralls, you know, that went all the way over you. Those were, and you know, in the summertime, all you wear is a pair of shorts and these things over the top, you know, and it was kind of cool. When we did have shoes, we had, I think you call them tennis shoes down there. We call them running shoes up here. They were a kind of canvas. You only paid $2 for them, and they only lasted for a summer, you know.
Were your clothes store-bought being one of the youngest,
Yeah.
or did you get hand-me-downs?
Well, hand-me-downs, yeah, but the original ones were bought.
Okay.
Yeah, there was very little, in our family, there were very few clothes made. We had a sewing machine, a pedal sewing machine. My mother was great on that machine. And she maybe made baby clothes, but not for us so much. Not that I can recall anyways.
Your sisters, when they were growing up, did they wear denim overalls, coveralls?
No.
Or did
They wore dresses. There was nothing like pants in those days. Yeah, they wore dresses, yeah. And I couldn't tell you what kind of a material. Cotton, I suppose. What would have been another one? Silk, but that was too expensive, I'm sure. I don't know what other kind of material there could have been that they would have used.
What about on those special occasions like church and stuff? What would you wear for those?
Well, you know, it's much different than it is now. You did not go to church unless you were dressed in your Sunday best. And that usually was a suit of a top coat and pants, you know, like we have suits nowadays. But of course, there were hand-me-downs. I remember that my older brother, Charlie, he had a suit and it got too small for him. So it was hanging in the closet there, and I was told it was going to be mine someday. And I would try that thing on every month, hoping it would fit. And boy, when it finally fit, did I strut out with that suit.
Backtracking just a little bit, we had talked a lot about food, but we never asked you what your favorite meal was when you were a kid.
Chicken noodle soup was my favorite soup. And I think potato salad or fried potatoes were my favorite in that area. Corn or peas were my favorite vegetables. Fruit, anything went when we could get it.
You say potato salad.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean German potato salad?
Yeah,
or
you boil the potatoes and cut them up, put vinegar and salt on them, pepper. If you have radishes, you slice them in. If you have boiled eggs, you put them in. Parsley, oil, yeah, a lot masala oil or olive oil, salt and pepper.
What about a dessert?
Puddings were a pretty good standby because you used a lot of cream, I think. I don't know what else they used in there, but it was all homemade pudding, vanilla pudding usually. Made pies. My mother would, when apples were in season, my mother would make pies. She'd very seldom peel them. She'd core them, but not peel them. And we didn't care because apple pie was apple pie. We have what you call a Saskatoon berry that grows around here. And it's about 10 miles or so to southwest of here where they grow. They also grow along the Saskatchewan River, but that's in Saskatoon, that's still further away. So every year at the time of when there were Saskatoon berries, they would take the buggy in the morning and take the baskets and cream cans and whatever, and as many as would fit. Our buggy was a two-seater and it held 6 people. And they would drive down to the bush and they would pick berries, take their lunch along and pick berries all day. And then they'd come home and they would can those berries and use them for pies. There was another berry called the choke cherry, which has a big seed in the inside. And the only thing you can use of it is the outside of it. And so they would put it on a screen and they would rub it with their hands and the juice would go through and the seeds, the little pits inside would stay on top, and they'd throw them away. And they would make jam out of those. That was about the only 2 fruits that grew around here, but we had to go and get them.
When you were talking about your farm, you mentioned that most of the farming was done with horse powered. Do you remember when your dad got his first tractor?
Yes, and it was the first rubber tire tractor around here. It was a little case tractor, and it was in 1940 when he bought that tractor. It had something to do with my grandfather passing away, and my grandfather was what they called a wealthy man. And my mother got some money, and my dad bought a Chevy car for $1,400. It was a special deluxe. It didn't have a heater. It didn't have a radio, but it was a special deluxe in those days. A beautiful car. And he also bought that little case tractor. And it was a rubber tire tractor. And whenever we'd be out on the field working with it, and neighbors would drive by and they'd stop and walk in when we came to the end and they wanted to ride on that tractor. Sometimes we even had to unhook it and show them how it went in high gear. It went about 10 miles an hour, and man, could we whip around in the field with that thing. But it was quite something, to have a rubber tire. Well, everybody saw the rubber's going to wear out so quick. You're going to have to buy new tires every year. But it didn't work that way. They were good, yeah. And then, of course, different people started buying tractors, and we moved. There was a big concern about that. Some people were very opposed to it because they felt that they could always raise their own power. They could have their horses, would have colts, and they would, have their own power. And these rubber tire tractors, well, when it wore out, you'd have to buy a new one and those kind of things. But like progress, it went on, and from there we moved into bigger ones, and finally into air-conditioned ones, and so on.
So when you were growing up, what type of equipment did you have on the farm?
When I was growing up, we had 2 bottom plows, and that took 5 horses to pull it. And when you went down the field, it did 2 feet. That's all you did. So you can imagine how much you got done in a day. Horses, I think you could make 3.5, our fields are all half a mile. Some are a mile, but mostly a half mile. And to go up and down, it would take you 20 minutes. So you could make 3 rounds like that in an hour. And you did 24 inches up and 24 inches down. And it took you a long time to get anything done. But that was the plowing. We had what you would call a cultivator, which was an 8-foot cultivator. That had 6 horses on it. But that you could only use once the plow would break the land. And then you could come with the cultivator because it was loose about this deep and you could cultivate it. Or else we had what they called a 7-foot disc that took 4 horses to pull it. As far as the seeding goes, we had a 28-run drill, which was 14 feet, and it took 6 horses. But you could put in 40 acres in a day. You could seed it. All it did was seed. And you could put in 40 acres in a day with that drill. But it took you 3-4 days maybe to prepare with 2 outfits to prepare enough for that drill. For harvesting, we had an 8-foot binder, was pulled by 4 horses, and it would throw out sheaves, about like that, and not that long. And then when they were binded, you have to come along and you have to stook them, put them together into bunches like that, keep the heads all up so the sun could shine in and dry them out. And then when it came to thrashing, of course, you'd have hay racks, and they would go out and load these up and bring them into the thrashing machine. And we used to have a lot of fun as we were kids. We were hauling the grain. That would be our younger kids' the job. There was a guy in the granary that would unload it, and out there the thrashing machine would fill up your wagon, and you'd drive the horses back to the granary, unload it, take the empty wagon and go back out and bring the full one back in again. But when we had some spare time, because when you were thrashing these sheaves, and they had a string around them. So the straw stack was full of these strings too. And we picked them out and tied them together, and we'd go to a stook and we tied the bundles together. So when the man would come out, the hired man would come out and take his fork, and the whole dang stook would come along. He'd cuss and have to take these strings and cut them off with his jackknife. So we had a little fun, in our work.
How much land was on your farm?
In the 30s, I think we were farming about 8 quarters of land at 160 acres a quarter. After the war, or during the war, we were farming 11 quarters of land because my grandfather, who had passed away, had given my mother, I think, about 3 or 4 quarters of land that he owned and gave it to her. So we had 11 quarters of land, and we were farming with that little case tractor with a 6-foot one-way. And we had to go like hell to put in 30 acres a day with that little fella. But my brother and I would take turns. We would go, some of the land was 5 miles away from home. So we'd have breakfast, take our lunch along, and we'd take the tractor and drive out at 10 miles an hour. It didn't take us, maybe an hour to get there, half an hour to get there. And then we'd take shifts. He'd work for about 4 hours, and I would have my slingshot going around trying to shoot something. And then I would go on the tractor, and he'd lay down and have a rest or whatever, read a book or whatever. And we worked till it was dark. We didn't have any lights, but as soon as it was starting to get dark, we'd unhook and drive home with the tractor again and have our supper. So that was how we farmed during the war. I had 2 brothers in the war. My brother, next older to me, was called, and he was in one winter in training, but then in spring he was allowed to come back home and didn't have to go back again. It was very difficult for my dad because here he was inexperienced young sons, trying to farm the land, and it was tough times on the farm, yeah.
When you weren't working on the farm, what type of activities did the kids do to entertain themselves?
Well, I can't really speak too much for others, but for myself, I loved sports. I loved to play ball. And we would have Sunday afternoons, we would have get-togethers. The church was a good organizer. Sunday afternoons, we would get together and have what they call a picnic. Different people were there, and we'd play ball and have lunch and so on, and kick a football around. I loved hockey in the wintertime. It was my pastime, We went to the neighboring towns, and it's some of the things, and I don't know whether you'd be interested in them or not, but the train came from Saskatoon in the evening at 10 to 7. Stopped here. We'd get on the train at 10 to 7, pay 2 bits to go, return ticket to go to the next town 8 miles down the road. And we'd play hockey there in the rink and sleep in the rink overnight and come home the next morning at 8:30. The next town down the road we paid 50 cents, and the other one 75 cents. And this was our hockey. We didn't have a roof in our rink, so they would come up on the train Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings, and we'd play in the daytime in our rink here, and they'd go back on the train in the evening again. And this was our hockey. It worked out real great. We played hockey for many, many years, and it was lots of fun, yeah.
You say it costs 2 bits to get on a train? You want to tell me what 2 bits equals?
Oh, 25 cents. Yeah. 4 bits is 50 cents. Huh?
Do you know why it was called 2 bits back then?
No, I haven't a clue, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you remember any other games or activities that you participated in when you were growing up?
Well, what we would do sometimes on a Sunday afternoon, we had a tennis ball. And you know, something like that was a real gift to us. Where it came from, I don't know. But you can imagine a tennis ball. We would take boards that were about a foot wide and cut ourselves a tennis racket out of them, huh? And then we would pound two fence posts in the ground and put a binder twine, a string across the top, and that was our net. And then we'd have a tournament, girls against boys, boys against each other, and so on. And to see who would, at the end, be the champion, huh? Spend all Sunday afternoon. A lot of times we would make root beer. Root beer was a good drink that was made. And I don't know how they made it, but it tasted good, and we'd have ourselves a picnic, you know, and have a tournament like that. Or else, you know, with as many of us on the farm, sometimes like 10 of us, you know, we would take two sides and have a softball game, something like that. We played kick the can, hide and go seek, those kind of games. You know, when you have that many, you know, you got 10 people, heck, you know, some of them couldn't run that fast, you know, so.
You mentioned that you would make some homemade toys when you were growing up.
Oh yeah, we made a lot of homemade toys. The older brothers would carve animals. And I'm telling you, these guys were good at it. They'd carve you a jackrabbit or a coyote or a fox or a camel or any. My brother Casper, he was the oldest one in that era there, and he could draw you most any animal. And it looked like that animal. It wasn't just, you know, a poor imitation. And they'd carve them out with their jackknives. We, at one time, because we didn't have the money, and the horses in the wintertime especially was a big thing. You wanted a nice harness. But you could get these, they call them spreaders. There were a bunch of celluloid rings, red, white, and blue, and so on. And they'd be in a leather strap like that, and you'd have them on your harness. So we cut them out of wood and painted them. And I was cutting with my jackknife, and then I slipped and cut my finger halfway through, right down to here. This part here was just dangling. And I pushed it together and went into the kitchen on top of the stove. There was a closet on top of the stove, those old stoves, and the ointment or salve or whatever was in there, and I put it on, and I grabbed a towel and a cloth, and I wrapped it up, and never went to see a doctor, and the darn thing grew together. You can still see the little line here a little bit. Yeah. God must have been with us.
You mentioned a couple of times that you would use slingshots. Were those store-bought or homemade?
Oh no, they were homemade. We'd always go out into the trees until we find just the right one that was shaped just the right way. Later on, we made them out of a rod. We'd take a 5/16 rod and bend them, and they were great too. And then you'd have, but our slingshots were not like these piddly little things. The rubber was, in those days, all the vehicle tires had rubber tubes inside, and it was good rubber till the war started, and then they came up with the synthetic rubber, and we had to hang on the stuff from the 30s, that was the good rubber. And the straps were about 3/4 of an inch wide, and about that long, and we shot a stone that was about as thick as the top of my thumb here. I killed many a rabbit with my slingshot, or a crow, and those kind of things. And I'm telling you, we were deadly with those things. We finally, shooting gophers was no fun anymore with a slingshot because we wouldn't miss. So we went and made ourselves bows and arrows, and we started shooting gophers with bows and arrows. That wasn't as good, but it was more challenging. Yeah.
So how did you make a bow and arrow?
Yeah, the funny part was, you know, we just took a slat from a binder canvas. They're about that long, they're out of oak, and they're about 1 inch wide and 1/2 inch thick. And we took a rubber band and put it down the back, though. And so when we pulled back, it wasn't that the bow arched in front, it was the rubber band. And our arrows we made out of just straight wood. And we put a nail in the front and take a piece of thin tin, and wrap it around, and so it would hold on there. And you just pull that thing back, and I'm telling you, it was deadly. Yeah. When you do something long enough, you know, you get good at it. It doesn't really matter what the heck it is. And we would never go anywhere unless we had a slingshot in our pocket and about 3 or 4 stones. That was part of our equipment, yeah.
So, with softball, you mentioned that you would play some softball games. Were those homemade balls and bats and gloves, or?
No, we never wore gloves. We would just go like this. And the ball was bought. But what it was maybe from the school where a ball was torn so bad that the stitching was torn so bad that they would throw it away. And then we would take it home and restitch that. And that was our ball. The bats were usually, you know, just a straight piece of wood. Or maybe somewhere along the line, maybe our dad bought us a bat once upon a time, you know. And
what about when you would play hockey? Did you have ice skates that you would use?
oh yeah. First of all, we made our own skates. We heard about hockey on the radio that we first got. We didn't know what it was. And it was just a screaming until we got used to what the heck was going on. But then we had a rink in town here, and we would go up and watch them on an open rink. Some of the older guys play. My older brothers never played any hockey. But we'd watch these guys on here, and we saw what it was like. So what we did was we took a piece of flat iron about an inch wide and about this long, and ground it around in the front so it wouldn't dig into the ice. And then we drilled a hole about this far from the front back. And we took a lighter piece of iron, riveted them on and bent them around like this, and we put our toes in there. And then in the back we drilled a hole and put a leather strap, a leather lace, and put it in and tied it around our ankle. And these were our skates then. And they were crude. And we always had a rink beside our windmill. As soon as it got cold in the fall, we'd take buckets and carry water and put it on the ground until we had enough ice so we could skate. Well, it was an uphill and downhill type of thing, but it was all ice. And a lot of times we would use the frozen horse turd for a puck because that was easy to find, huh? And when it smashed up, we'd get another one. And we made our own hockey sticks. We just took a long stick like this and another blade in front and bolted it together and a couple of nails so it couldn't swing. You couldn't raise with it. You just slap it around on the ice out there. But, you know, the funny part was, you know, every once in a while the skate would get loose on your foot, so you'd have to stop and kick it tight again like this. So when you had a breakaway, you had to stop and kick it, but the guy behind you had to stop and kick his too, so it didn't really matter. He couldn't catch you. So it was fun. We used to have a lantern hanging on a pole alongside so we could play in the dark. You'd lose the puck and look around for a while. Oh, I'll find a new one. There were lots of horse turds flying around, so... yeah, we had fun galore in our big family. No kidding.
Was there anybody that was musically inclined in your family?
I was. I played a guitar in a band, and I still play. And I cut my fingers off this winter on the jointer, but they healed together pretty good. I can still play a little bit with it. But I played in a band in Saskatoon for quite a few years. Yeah.
Were you self-taught?
Yeah. You know, we had a hired man that played a mouth organ. We had never heard a mouth organ before. Oh man, was that beautiful. Then we found out that a cousin of ours in town had a Hawaiian guitar. So we asked him whether we could take it out because our hired man knew how to play a guitar. So we took it out. Now it was Hawaiian, but it didn't matter. You could still tune the strings to Spanish. You just turned them a little tighter or a little looser or whatever. And he showed us one chord. And then winter came and he went away. And then my oldest brother, not my oldest brother, one of my oldest brother was called into the army. And he went into training for 1 month in Dundurn, which is about 20 miles southwest of here. There's a camp there. And he got $1.40 a day. And he wrote back to us and told us that we should go and borrow $15 from Grandma and order the Lone Ranger guitar in the Eaton catalog. And when he comes back, he'll pay Grandma back. So that's how we got our first guitar. Lone Ranger guitar. Well, we knew that one chord and we pounded around and we listened to the radio. We had a famous entertainer up here called Wilf Carter. He was in the Grand Ole Opry for a while too. But most Americans don't know about Wilf Carter, but we listened to him. He was always on the radio. And by listening and trying, we learned a few things like that. And in the fall when I was hauling grain, I went and I took myself a board about as wide as a guitar neck is, and marked the frets on, and I'd sit on there while I was hauling grain, go with my fingers, pretending there were strings on to get my fingers used to it. I was clumsy. Oh my God, was I clumsy. But I wouldn't give up. And I finally learned to play the thing pretty good, you know.
So when you would play, would this be something that the family would sit around and listen to you
Yeah.
or sing along with you?
Some of the other boys, my brother Tony learned to play the guitar, and maybe Irvin a little bit. But they didn't have the patience to really make something with it. I was determined, and I had a friend who played the accordion, So we'd go out and play school dance. There were little country schools around here in those days. Every 6 miles or so there was a country school, and they'd have dances some Saturday or Friday evenings. And we'd go out, and for $5 the two of us would play a dance. And hey, this was great. This would earn money. Man, that was fine. Then later on we formed a band, and we played a lot of dances. In fact, we played so many dances during the week that I had to quit. I was dating a girl at the time and planning to get married, and I either had to give up the band or else give up the girl, and I decided to give up the band. So, and then later on we got together again in the late 80s, and then we played a lot in Saskatoon and in different towns around here and so on, yeah.
So what was the band called?
Blackjacks, yeah.
Do you know how you came up with the name?
It had happened that before we started our band, the guy who played the accordion and the guy who played a drum and the guy who played a sax, they were all three related. And they took off for a couple of weeks to go out to Vancouver one fall. And when they were out there, they didn't have any money, so they decided they'd play a dance. So they got together and they rented a hall and they played the dance, and they had to have a name, so they called themselves the Blackjacks. And that's when they came back home. Then they same three guys, and I played in with them, and that was our band then, yeah. Yeah. We play old-time music, mostly the German, a lot of German. There's a place in Saskatoon called the German Concordia. It's a big hall, it holds 500 people, and we played in there a lot, and we played the German kind of music. Du liegst mir im Herzen, different kind of, well, the Bierbra Polka and all those kind of old-time songs, you know, or Wooden Heart, Presley's.
So when you were growing up, did you have a favorite musician that you would listen to?
Well, yeah, as far as country and western music goes, Wilf Carter, Hank Snow. I liked Roy Acuff. He was the guy who started the Grand Ole Opry. And I was down in Nashville one time. We went down to Nashville to see the Grand Ole Opry. And there were lots of country music was my favorite music. Yeah. Then of course, you know, there was accordion player, I forget his name now. Whatever, can't think of his name right now.
Well, was there any?
Well, the guy with the big band, Lawrence Welk. Yeah, yeah.
Was there anybody else in your family that picked up playing an instrument, or?
Well, my oldest brother Frank played the keyboard a little bit, but just, you know, for his own pastime. And I do a lot of that too. Later on I bought myself a 4-track recorder, and I have it downstairs, and I would tape myself singing, and then I would harmonize to myself, put on the headphones and listen to yourself and harmonize on another track, and then put in fill in, and you know, when you put it all together, you've got quite a bit of volume, because you've got 4 tracks with the same guy doing the same thing, you know, and it's pretty interesting, you know. I used to spend, when I was living alone before I married in Ireland, that was my favorite pastime. Sit down, I'd spend hours down there. It took me a long time to do a good job too on any of the songs, as far as that goes.
So was your music encouraged by your parents, or was it just something that you kind of picked up? No,
my parents didn't pay much attention to my hockey or to anything like that, you know. I don't know. It's just something. My dad was one of those people who says, only by hard work can you get anywhere. The rest of it, whether it's music, art, or whatever it is, it's all right to pass your time. I don't know whether you'd be interested in a little incident that happened to me. I was cutting the grass in the yard. I was about 18 years old, and I was cutting down the weeds in the yard when the ball team, this was baseball though, pulled into the yard. I was a catcher in baseball. That was my position. And a regular catcher couldn't go that day. And they were going down to Hanley or someplace about 25 miles southwest to what we call a sports day. You call them a fair or something down there, where you have all get together in a town and play ball and whatever. Yeah, I don't know whether they call them a fair or whatever it is. Anyways, it's a day where different teams get together and play ball, and you have soda pop and candy bars and those kind of things, you know, and have fun. And they needed a catcher, so they came out to pick me up while I was cutting the grass in the yard. So I asked my dad whether I could go. Well, he said, well, who's going to cut the grass? I said, well, we can maybe cut it tomorrow. Okay, so you can go. So, okay, I got into the house to change my dirty clothes and get into the proper clothes. And I'm going out, and my mother comes and gives me 50 cents. And I realized, oh my God, I haven't got any money. But oh well, I had 50 cents, so I jumped on the back of the truck. It was a big 3-ton truck, and we were all in the back. We drove, when we went through the gate, we had to pay 50 cents to get in. This was 10 o'clock in the morning. I had nothing. I had no money. I had nothing. I didn't really care. I was allowed to play ball that day. So when evening came along, and we lost out somewhere in the afternoon, but the team wasn't going to go home because they were having a good time out there. So I didn't have nothing to eat, and I was getting pretty damn hungry. All the one's a friend of mine. By the grace of God, he must have realized that he came and brought me a hamburger and a drink and saved the day for me. Yeah. That times were tough, yeah.
So when you were playing catcher for this baseball team, was it actually like an organized team?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, it was an organized team, you know. And every town had their organized team. I was young yet, you see. These were the senior team, and therefore, you know, I wouldn't be playing with them very often, only when the catcher couldn't go.
When you were growing up, do you remember any of your favorite songs from your childhood?
Oh yeah, you know, well in the earlier days it was You Are My Sunshine, Red River Valley, some of the German songs. I loved Wilf Carter. Wilf Carter's songs were mostly about Canada though, the Blue Canadian Rockies. Later on, you know, it was different kind of songs like Johnny Cash's Sunday Morning Coming Down. I don't know, when you try and think of something, you can't think of it, but anyways, those are the kind of songs that I like now.
You mentioned German songs. Do you remember any of the names of the German songs?
Du Du liegst mir im Herzen is one of them. I don't know whether you're familiar with that, no? Mm-hmm. Edelweiss was not really a German song, but you know, it's a... yeah, when you're gone, I can think of lots of them.
Do you remember any type of other activities besides music and ball and hockey that you participated in your childhood?
Not in anything that was organized, you know. That was the summer sport and the winter sport that was organized. Other than that, you know, just playing catch or we had a game that was called one guy would bat. I think it was called 500. You got for a fly, you got 100. You caught a fly, you got 100 points. You caught a first bouncer, you got 50 points. And as soon as you had anyone had 500 points, like there'd be maybe 6 or 7 people out there catching and one guy batting. And when somebody had 500 points, he'd come in and bat, and that guy would go out. And we played an awful lot of that. We even played that in our own family because there were enough kids there, you know, to one bat and 8 or so out there catching. The girls didn't always participate with those kind of sports. But some of them were more like tomboys, so they would participate, where others were more sophisticated. They wouldn't play with us. Now, this is a song that I composed from the song Green, Green Grass at Home. I think Tom Collins or somebody like that did that song. Oh, the old town looks the same as I step down from the train. There to meet me was my mama and my papa. Down the lane I look, and there runs Mary, hair of gold and lips like cherries. It's good to touch the green, green grass of home. The little outhouse is still standing, but the catalogs are all gone. There's that well-worn path that I used to run on. Oh, how well I recall the day when I only made it there halfway. So I sat right down in the green, green grass of home. Many times I picked a handful of grass when there was no paper to wipe my butt in the little outhouse in the green, green grass of home. Although it choked you half to death, 'cause it took away your breath, but still the whole procedure was relaxing. But it sure gave you a scare when you looked and there was no more paper there in the little outhouse in the green, green grass of home. Oh yes, I still remember when I got a sliver in my rear end in the little outhouse in the green, green grass of home. I remember, yes sirree, when Mommy first took me in to pee, and I saw those two big round holes staring at me. Well, it scared me right out of my wits. In fact, that's why I got the runs in the little outhouse in the green, green grass of home. No, you never had to pay a toll, but you sure caught hell when you missed the hole in the little outhouse in the green, green grass of home. This is Johnny Cash's song, and I have a 4-track tape recorder, and I sing on one track, I harmonize sometimes on the other track, I put fill in on another track, and sometimes it's just according of the melody and so on. So it's all then put together into one track, and this is what it sounds like.
I woke up Sunday morning with no way to hold my head that didn't hurt. And the beer I had for breakfast wasn't bad, so I had one more for dessert. Then I fumbled in my closet through my clothes and found my cleanest dirty shirt. And I washed my face and combed my hair and stumbled down the stairs to meet the day. I smoked my mind the night before with cigarettes and songs that I'd been picking. I stopped and watched a small boy playing with that can that he was kicking. Then I headed across the street and caught the Sunday smell of someone frying chicken. Lord, it took me back to something that I lost somewhere, somehow along the way. On a Sunday morning sidewalk, wishing the Lord that I were stoned. 'Cause there's something about a Sunday makes the body feel alone. And there's nothing short of dying half as lonesome as the sound of the sleeping city sidewalk. Sunday morning coming down.
This is a song I composed myself, and I composed it because when Marilyn was my girlfriend and we were driving, and we were quiet, we weren't talking, we were quite early in the early stages of our knowing each other even, she said to me, "Well, talk to me." And so I started talking to her, I don't know what anymore, but anyways, afterwards, it made me compose this song.
Love me as I love you, honey, make my dreams come true.
Marilyn is singing with
Love me
now. I'm gonna
as
hit.
I love you, my dear. Love me as I love you, honey, make my dreams come true. Love me as I love you, my dear. When you are in my arms, love, all my worries fade away. When I feel your arms around me, I can't wait to hear you say, whisper as you're kissing me. It feels so heavenly to hear you say, my honey, talk to me. When you are in my arms, love, all my worries fade away. When I feel your arms around me, I can't wait to hear you say, whisper as you're kissing me. It feels so heavenly to hear you say, my honey, talk to me. To hear you say, my honey, talk to me.
This is a song that Eddie Arnold composed, and when he first hit the charts, it was a very popular song. So I'm doing it for you.
When the cattle are prowling and coyotes are howling, way out where the doggies bawl, where spurs are a-jingling, a cowboy is singing this lonesome cattle call. He rides in the sun till his day's work is done, as he rounds up the cattle each fall. Singing this cattle call.
Okay. Up here in Canada, back in the 30s, Easterner from Prince Edward Island started out to compose songs. He composed very, very many songs, and he was famous for his yodeling. And the thing that got him really started was when he went to New York and recorded this song for Bluebird Records. And this is a song that made him famous. And I try and imitate him for as close as I can get, but you'll have to listen to it yourself.
Strolling along in the moonlight by a mountain stream, high up in the mountain, there lies my golden dream. There lives my sweetheart, waiting day by day, watching from the doorstep of her moonlight Swiss chalet. moonlight lullaby. Oh, yeah, hi, ho, lo, 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 dee, ho, lo, 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 dee, ho, lo, 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 dee. Oh, dee, hi, ho, dee, ho, lo, 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 dee, dee, ho, lo, dee, ho, lo, dee. Dee, oh, dee, lee, oh, lee, oh, lee, oh, lee. Dee, oh, dee, lee, oh, lee, oh, lee, oh, lee. When I cross the valley and climb the mountains high, I hear the echo yodeling of my Swiss moonlight lullaby. It echoes through the canyons and along the mountains high, and it sets my heart a-flutter, my Swiss moonlight lullaby. Roll along, oh silvery moon, roll along on high. While I sing, I'm yodeling my Swiss moonlight lullaby. Oh, yeah, hi, oh, dee, oh, dee, oh, dee. Oh, yeah, hi, oh, dee, dee, oh, dee, oh, dee. Dee, oh, dee, lee, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, lee. Dee, oh, dee, lee, oh, hey, oh, hey, lo, hey, oh, dee.
Bist du dann, mein Schätzelein, Schätzelein, so soll die Hochzeit sein. Wenn ich komm, wenn ich wiederum komm, kehr ich ein, mein Schatz, bei dir. In einem Jahr, dann ist mein Zeit vorbei, dann kehr ich wiederum dein. Bist du dann, mein Schätzelein, mein Schätzelein, dann soll die Hochzeit sein. The song I'm going to do now is called Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. It goes back to even before the 50s. And we used to sing it an awful long, and it's been oftentimes when I've gone to entertain at a place, people have asked me to do this song for them, so I'll put it on tape now. In the twilight glow I see her, blue eyes crying in the rain. As we kissed goodbye and parted, I knew we'd never meet again. Love is like a dying ember, only memories remain. Through the ages I'll remember blue eyes crying in the rain. Now my hair has turned to silver, all my life life I've lived in vain. I can see her star in heaven, blue eyes crying in the rain. Someday when we meet up yonder, we'll stroll hand in hand again in a land that knows no parting, blue eyes crying in the rain. This song is called Saskatchewan because we had a contest in our province here in the year of 2005 because it was a 100-year anniversary, and many artists, singers composed songs and send them in for the contest. We never did find out whether we came in first, 10th, or 15th. Well, first, of course, but other than that, no. A group that composed a song, more of a modern type group or more of a rock and roll, won the contest. The funny part was many people who heard my song, and in fact when I sang it here, well, my wife and I sang it here in Ellen for the first song at an evening of entertainment. After the evening was over, they asked us to come back up and sing it again. And they felt that we certainly should have won the prize. So be that how it be, this is the song.
Tiger lilies bloom. How I love to sit and listen to the echo of the loon. How I love the soft cool evenings and the golden setting sun. There's no place on earth as dear to me as you, Saskatchewan. In the spring when Mother Nature turns the earth from white to green, you will see the loveliest sight that your eyes have ever seen, where the buttercups and violets and roses all grow wild. Mother Nature blossoms into the light just like a newborn child. Why not come to see our province for your summer holidays, where the warm and friendly people make you wish that you could stay, where the air has no pollution and the streams run crystal clear, where the lakes are full of fresh fish and they're bigger every year. In the fall when autumn sunshine smiles across the golden grain, and the ducks and geese head southward until springtime comes again, you can hear them calling goodbye as they fly into the blue. If you close your eyes and listen, I'm sure you can hear them too. I know it gets cold in the winter when the snow is here to stay, but the northern lights and hoarfrost almost take your breath away. With your favorite TV program by your fireplace so bright, you'll find peace on earth, goodwill to men, and every Christmas white. Here is where I'm proud to live and join in all the fun as we celebrate 100 years with you, Saskatchewan.